The decision by the federal independent MP Andrew Wilkie to withdraw support for the government over poker machine reforms is unlikely to lead to an early election. Julia Gillard yesterday announced she was scrapping a deal with Mr Wilkie for mandatory poker machine pre-commitment technology by 2014. She said there wasn't enough support in the parliament. She instead announced a new strategy, which involves a trial of the technology in the ACT with a view to a nationwide rollout by the end of 2016. Andrew Wilkie has now withdrew his support from the federal government, saying the Prime Minister has broken the trust of the Australian people. The move reduces the government's majority back to one, but even though Mr Wilkie has withdrawn his support for Labor, he says he won't back any motions of no confidence against the government unless there is serious misconduct. And Andrew Wilkie's decision has made the position of the other independents all the more important. The independent member for Tamworth, Tony Windsor, a short time ago spoke to my colleague Andrew Gagan, who asked him whether Julia Gillard and her government can still be trusted.
Well, that's an odd question, and it shouldn't relate to this particular issue. What we're actually talking about here is a minority government position. And I think people have got to stop looking at it through the prism of being a majority. The government doesn't have a majority to carry out its agenda. It has to rely on the support of others. And my reading of the tea leaves is on this particular issue, the mandatory pre-commitment issue, it wouldn't have had the numbers in the Parliament. So in that context, I think the Prime Minister has put up a proposal to Andrew Wilkie, which is different to what he wanted. Andrew could, in fact, or anybody could, in fact, or if Tony Abbott seems very keen on the mandatory pre-commitment arrangements now, he could, in fact, put it up and see whether it could get through the Parliament. But I think it's fairly obvious, given the minority position of the government and the proclaimed voting intentions of the other independents, that it wouldn't get through the Parliament.
Well, the reason I ask you is, can she be trusted, is, of course, the reaction from many, including Andrew Wilkie and Nick Xenophon and others, is that the PM has reneged on this deal.
Well, that again gets down to, she made a commitment to Andrew Wilkie. The Parliament would not be able to deliver that agreement. She doesn't have control over my vote. So even though she may, or the Prime Minister may, or Andrew Wilkie may, and I am a friend of Andrew's, he may think that that would in fact be delivered. That's not the case. I don't believe that mandatory pre-commitment would hit the target audience. That's not to say I'm in favour of poker machines. If I was God, I wouldn't have allowed the damn things to be invented. But I don't believe that process would have worked. If a trial is going to, in fact, take place, and Andrew and Nick Xenophon and others believe that mandatory pre-commitment will work, the trial should indicate that. And if that's the case, well, I'd have to revisit the research that I've done. But just because the Parliament is in a hung Parliament, that doesn't mean I have to go for some sort of protection mechanism to keep the Parliament alive. If the nature of a hung Parliament is that they are very fragile. But I'm going to be voting on each issue as I see it, not on the way in which others may well see the survival of the current Parliament or not.
As part of the new plan announced by Julia Gillard yesterday, a trial of mandatory pre-commitment technology will take place in the ACT. The Chief Minister there, Katie Gallagher, says she's happy the ACT can play a role in poker machine reform. But she says the territory should be compensated for any lost revenue.
We're not looking for anything necessarily. We've got a very small reliance on gaming machine tax through our own budget. We raise about $34 million a year through the taxes that are paid on owning having a licence for a gaming machine, a poker machine. So we'd be looking to make sure we're not financially disadvantaged, but I think those discussions can occur within the framework of the trial that's been proposed.